Alright, I'm just getting the models prepared here, and time to actually go print them. So, first, just import them way you would any normal model. And actually, let me see, you may want to use the wizard. So there's two ways to go about this. You can use the wizard, which probably will be easier at first. So after you enroll them, or after you import them here, you just go into the dual extrusion wizard up top, which, obviously is tools, dual extrusion wizard. Make sure you have the correct dual color process selected. Pick your extruder that you want to actually have it. Now, if the models are imported separately like this, then you're going to want to leave group and align models checked. Now, if you have manually aligned two models that aren't already grouped, then you'll need to uncheck that. But in this case, since I have them modeled together, we can just leave it that way. And actually, I think I messed up the importing. Here, let me go back to here in Fusion. And so this is one thing when you're modeling your own stuff, if you're exporting it, that can be an issue is it will actually export them flat a lot of times. And I don't think it has an option here, so we'll just fix it and simplify. So obviously what I did didn't work for printing dual color because it's aligning them all flat. So just come over here and ungroup them and remove all the processes. And how you would actually get this aligned is going to be to come over here to the drawer and just do your normal rotation. So this actually, I think will need a 90. Nope, the other one. And drop it to the table here. And so now it's a little closer. We just need to move it where it would want to go. I mean, obviously this one would print as separate models, which is why it's modeled how it was, but just pretending for the example that we wanted to actually print these at the same time in different colors. Now that it's aligned, go back and select the two models, go to your dual extrusion wizard, turn off that check mark this time, and of course if we wanted to swap these around, we can, it's no big deal. Pick your material here, this is important as well. So, for me, I always print everything in ABS, so I go with this one. After you have it done that way, it's going to regroup here, and this time you'll see if you click on the two different processes, it changes which model's highlighted. If you have a lot of models and say you get one of those wrong, it's really easy to fix that. You just pick the color that you want to change, go in here to select models, and you can highlight which models it actually prints on that color. Just be very careful that you don't select the same model on two different processes, or it will try to print in the same space with both colors. And of course you can do things individually per process, like go in here for each individual color and select different temperatures and things like that. Now, what you have with this process is there's actually a script in the tool change, which actually I don't have turned on in my version of it because I don't have two nozzles. But your version of it will have a script on the tool changes that actually makes it wait in between changes of color. So it's going to reduce the temperature when it's not printing that color, so it doesn't burn the filament and so it doesn't ooze all over your print. And then it'll raise the temperature when you're ready to use that nozzle, which is great when you have ones that you're maybe not going to use for 12 hours in a print, or materials like PVA that will burn if you don't have them either constantly printing or manage your temperature properly, which is what my processes do. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to pay attention to when you're printing dual color is your additions. So you're going to need either to make a custom shield, ooze shield, or to do it yourself. Now, what you can do if you only had, for instance, dual color for maybe the first few layers of the part, in your processes, in the additions, instead of using an ooze shield, which will go the whole way up and just waste a ton of material, you can actually just use a brim or a skirt, set it, 3 millimeters from the part, 2 outlines, and then the number of layers will be how tall you want your shield to be. So if I want, say these are 0.1 layers, and I want it 10 millimeters high, so I'll just do 100 layers that with both extruders, and this will actually handle the priming between color changes and the ooze shield, so you don't even need a prime pillar with it. Now, if you're going to print without a shield or have something you really just don't care about color contamination, you will still want to use a prime pillar at that point, even if you don't have a shield, just to give it some spot to, prime out. You can use a pretty small one, though, if you're not worried about color contamination. But that's really all there is to setting it up. The wizard's the easy way to do it. You can do it yourself simply by adding multiple processes and just going here to the select models window. That's really all the dual extrusion wizard does. Is it groups them, of course, which is really irrelevant to it, but you can go in here and just make your own. And this way, if you have a lot of more complex settings, like on this model, when I print it, I print this model, well, sorry, I'm moving it around. I print it with a lot of different infill settings to minimize the material, because this model is about 2/3 of a spool if you print it at a normal infill rate. And so what I would actually do printing this model is come down here. Let me get out of move mode so I quit moving it around. So I would actually print this at super low infill until just a couple layers before the top of this, and then increase the infill a little bit, and then drop the infill back down through like all of this section to about 10% until you get just before the top, and then get it to fill properly. But that's kind of some of the more advanced things that you can do if you don't use the wizard to do the dual color. And so I'll just kind of show an example of that. So say I want to do dual color at this point without using the wizard. I've already got my process set here, add it, and I'm going to go ahead and add another one. And so now I have two processes. Go into the first one, select models, unselect one of them, go into the other process, and I'm going to unselect the first one. Now is where the fun part comes in. So this second process here, I'm going to need to change which extruder it uses. So for the layers, change this one to right extruder. Additions, you can change it, leave it at dual if it's both, but your infill, you can select which extruder it uses. Same thing with your supports, dense supports, if you want to use different extruder for the supports. It's really pretty intuitive. You just have to make sure you go through each part of it and grab everything you need. I think all you really need is support additions and infill and layer, but that's how you would do a dual color without using the wizard. And so when it comes time to print, you're of course always faced with this window when you have more than one process. Now, for most all of what you're going to do, you're going to select all, and you're going to do continuous printing layer by layer. You would do sequential if you're trying to get fancy, like print multiple colors with a single nozzle, where you need to print a couple millimeters and then come back and switch materials and things like that. But for most of the time, this is your safe setting. Continuous, let them do it all at once, and then go ahead and let it slice. Now, what you want to look for when you've sliced it, and if it'll come up with the preview here, I have like 5,000 things running on the computer at the moment, so it's a little slow. So here's your sliced model. This obviously is your normal view. You're going to want to at least look at the coloring active tool head before printing, and just verify that everything looks good for multiple colors. This is telling you what's going to print with which one. And obviously this is a gigantic print and would take forever, about 100 hours, how this is sliced. But it's really, when you do it a few times, it gets easier and easier. But start off with the wizard, and then later on over time, you can build up to just making your own processes as you go. And that way you can get to the really complex stuff. So whenever you come to a print like this, you can do really tall layers in the middle where it's flat, and then you can get smooth edges with thin layers, and you could end up having like 6 or 8 processes on a print like this if you're really going to optimize it. And it's pretty easy to do once you get used to it. So hopefully that gives you some guidance on how to use some of the more advanced features of the dual color options and different processes in Simplify.